Hi Dino, it's lovely to have you on here today. Obviously we've spoken a little bit before we've popped on tonight, and we're super excited to speak to you and learn a bit more about you and who you are, because obviously there's a bit more than just Dino Perelli in there. So let's just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, your background of it, and how you got into music in particular.
Okay. I was born in the south side of Chicago, Illinois, back in 1925. Can't give away your age, but it was a long time ago. And my father was a musician growing up. When he was growing up, I should say, he played saxophone and clarinet, so I started playing instruments even in first grade. I was playing guitar and piano and stuff like that. I started on drums in fourth and fifth grade. In sixth grade, I got a guitar, and I stayed with that, and I kind of liked it and stuff. I started taking guitar lessons, started my first band in 1967. Now I am dating myself, I guess, but with a bunch of guys. We were in like seventh grade. We were in junior high school, and we did real well. I mean, we were playing all the local gigs, and for about 4 years, until we were. In fact, during that in 1969, we got approached by a small local label who contracted us to do a record for him, a 45. That was our first record. We were only 14 years old. And he was just a small label that they record you and then they try and sell you to a larger label kind of thing, hoping that you'll catch on or be popular. Well, 14 years old, I mean, my voice was like ridiculously high with two awful songs that I had written. I mean, I look back on them and it's embarrassing. I can't even play them and listen to them anymore. But so this went on until I was 16, at which point my parents decided to move to Las Vegas from Chicago. And that's when my world just changed, completely. I mean, in so many ways, besides musically and everything else. I mean, just personally and stuff. And, it was the first time at that point that my dad and I were in close proximity all the time. And I was a rebellious teenager. And it was like, I got to get out of here, and a friend of mine in Minnesota said when he was the bass player in our band in Chicago. Meanwhile, his family moved to Minnesota. And he says, come on up here. You can finish school and we'll start a band. I go, well, that does sound a lot better. So I finished high school up there after, well, actually, I jumped around quite a bit before landing there finally and graduating. 2 weeks out of high school, my girlfriend that I was dating in my senior year, her father was like a Las Vegas lounge type entertainer. And he calls her up and he goes, hey, I just lost my drummer. Do you know anybody that plays drums? She goes, well, my boyfriend, hang on, let me turn that up. She goes, well, my boyfriend is a musician. He said he used to play drums, So he calls me up and I says, well, yeah, I used to play drums. I said, but I don't even have a kit. He goes, oh, I got a kit. And I go, okay. I go, well, what kind of material are you doing? Because, it's not like I'm going to be playing any Rush or like that. I mean, he goes, oh, remember, this is 1973. He goes, oh, we're doing stuff like Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. I go, I can do that. So I went out with him 2 weeks out of high school. I was out on the road. I went from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Beaumont, Texas, the roadway in Beaumont, Texas. Spent about the next 4 or 5 years just on the road. I mean, we literally lived on the road. This was back in the States back then. Every Holiday Inn and Ramada Inn and everything along the interstates all had lounges. I mean, in most cases, these were small towns, and that was the only place for people to go hear entertainment and stuff. So it was really a huge market until the late 70s when disco came in and they realized how much cheaper they could do it with a DJ and just the music and stuff, So that took me through, about the mid 70s. I landed in Atlanta. We were starting to do some original stuff. I had some personal issues going on in my life. I ended up going back to Vegas. And again, I was more focused on the rock and roll and original things for a while, which means you don't make any money at all, of course, And during that period is when I landed my second record deal with Rich Records. And they had me doing out of the two cuts, the A side was a real poppy little thing I'd written called The Girl with the Big Brown Eyes. I mean, it was literally sappy and stuff, But they saw this, oh, look at this, white guy and stuff, he looks like a boy next door, which I did back then, kind of thing. And they go, well, yeah, let's record him and stuff. I said, look, at the time I had a song that I'd been playing in the local bars all over Vegas called How Can I Say I Love You When You're Sitting on My Face? It was just a silly little song. It was like a Southern rock kind of thing, with the push and stuff. There's no dirty words in it or anything, but it was suggestive, obviously, and it was just a big hoot. I said, look, you can put that other song on the A side and promote that to the record stations, but if you want to actually sell any of these 45s in town, you have to put "How Can I Say I Love You?" Because I got like a whole. I mean, I had people that would come in and invent dances to this song when I'm playing the local clubs and stuff. I mean, they were just crazy about it. When I released it, half the jukeboxes in Las Vegas, I had my 45 on it. And well, it turns out a friend of mine that his father was, kind of they owned a lot of jukeboxes in Vegas, had my song on it. But he comes to me one day, he goes, your song's getting played like twice as much as any of our other stuff. And I go, well, how come I'm not getting any royalty checks? I haven't seen a dime from this. I'm selling records like crazy off the stage. So it would show up in weird markets and stuff. Dr. Demento actually played it on his radio show. Which was funny because later in 1989, I was out in Vegas and I ended up being on the Gong Show in its last incarnation, at the time. And Dr. Demento was one of the judges, and he had no idea, that I was the same guy that was doing the song that he used to play or anything. But he's the only guy that gave us a 9. But we still won anyway, so that was good. And then, since then, I mean, through the 90s, I in the early 90s, mid 90s, I had a band called Danger Zone, and we did an EP. In fact, one of our songs had gotten picked up by the #1 contemporary adult station in Vegas and was getting played every hour. They were actually getting requests for it. And I thought, okay, great. I mean, we don't have a manager. We don't have a label. We got nothing, but the band just decided to record this and we had some juice. Vegas runs on juice, and stuff. So, we put it out there and they go, yeah, it's getting some traction and stuff. 2 weeks later, the station was sold. They changed the format. And now, there was nothing else we could do. It was like right on the street. So that kind of fell apart. Then I went to Texas for a while. I mean, by that time I was getting a little older. So I was looking to be, I was just playing anything to make a living, just cover stuff, and pursuing the original stuff whenever I could, which I still do. I mean, I just wrote a song a couple of weeks ago, that I still put it out there. But now my expectations aren't so much as going out on the road and performing them live as I'd like to find somebody else who likes them and wants to record them, especially if it's somebody famous or something, because you walk in with a paycheck, as soon as they agree to record it for you. So that kind of brings us up to now. I guess we're pretty close.
I think it's really nice to hear that it came from your dad being a musician and it's pretty much been there your entire life, and then all the different kind of journeys you've been on with it and the different radio stations, labels, because that's something we'll speak about in a bit. I think really interesting in my opinion. One of our questions was going to be asking if you play any instruments, but we got that answer from you anyway. So
I was going to...
Well, actually, I forgot to mention, in 95, I had a little money saved up because I was working at that casino full time. So I had some dough and I thought, I'm either going to go into a studio. I want to do an album. I can either go into the studio and spend $5,000 recording and that's it, or I can just buy my own equipment and sit in my bedroom at home and do the whole thing myself. So I bought an ADAT, 8-track ADAT system and a mixer and all that stuff. And I did 8 songs, all original tunes. And I not only wrote them and engineered them, but I'm also playing every instrument on it. I'm doing all, I mean, it was completely self-produced because I just took my time and it was like, I knew what I wanted to hear. And it took me about 3 months to do 8 songs. And that's actually available on my website too. But that was called, There's Danger in Vegas.
We're making sure we'll put any links below this anyway for anybody who wants to go and check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your an advice for up and coming artists who are new to the game?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really hard for me to give advice because things have changed so much in the music business. I mean, some things never change, like always be on, kind of thing. Personality wins so much of the time. Working in Las Vegas, I learned that the hard way, that don't just stand there with a dumb look on your face and play. I mean, do something, emote somehow, whether it's laughter, crying, or moving around, whatever it takes. Music should be about emotion and stuff. Don't be afraid. If you hold that back, you're just cutting off your nose to spite your face. And I would also say that in my particular case, I don't know if it's like this now, but right out of high school, I mean, it became my source of income. I was a full-time musician from day one. I mean, I've had to take some straight jobs in between, between bands, especially before I could do. Now I just do a sequence single, and I can go out and play. I don't need a whole band and stuff, just make some money on the side. But when I was right out of high school and stuff, I wish I had concentrated more on an original project right out of the gate, because I really didn't start doing the original stuff until I was already like my middle to late 20s. And by then it's almost too late, because some of these acts you're competing with, these kids are in their teens and early 20s and stuff, and it's so hard to get noticed. I mean, I've tried moving to LA a couple times. That was a farce in itself. I drove a school bus that I'd converted. I was living in out on the road when I left my second wife down in South Padre Island, Texas, and in 1986 or so. And I drove the school bus to Manhattan in New York, thinking I'm going to live in my school bus and I'm going to find, I'm going to make my way here in New York. I was an idiot, that long ago. I was young and stupid. I lasted 4 days in New York. And then I drove down to Atlantic City and hooked up with a road act, a show band, casino act. And again, I had income and stuff, and I was out on the road, So it's tough. I mean, and I've had friends that have done work a regular day job while trying to pursue the music on the side, all original stuff. But I don't think that ever really works either, because your day job always has to take precedence because it's your income and stuff. So my best advice is learn how to live as cheaply as possible. I mean, I went through the 90s and stuff where I was making six figures a year. I was doing real well. But now I'm not, now that I'm older and stuff again, and I'm just working gigs here and there, and this is all I do for a living, I don't make squat again. So just get used to living cheaply. And if you do start to make more money, bank it or something. Don't just piss it away, because money's like water. It seeks its own level. The more you make, the more you're going to want to spend and stuff. But fight that temptation to do that, because there's going to be highs and lows. Either that or just get used to living in the lows,
Yeah, I was speaking to somebody else recently as well, and they were saying about the work, like the real life kind of work, and then the music, and how it's important to kind of make sure that if you've got like this job and you want to do music seriously, that they'll be flexible enough for you to be able to do that. Otherwise, you're just going to really struggle. So I think that's really important to kind of get out there. If you want to do it seriously, then you're going to have to get something flexible to try and help with that.
Well, and I guess it depends too, how serious you are about it. I mean, you another thing, you know your instrument, learn your instrument, and I mean, that's the most important part. It all starts with that. I mean, but knowing your instrument just isn't enough. You can play your ass off. I used to have a guy out on the road with me in the early years. I was like 19, he was 18. I had my first show band, and we're wearing suits and tuxes and stuff, and doing the show stuff. And he was just a phenomenal. He'd only been playing for like 2 years, but he was this guy that would just sit down 4 and 5 hours a day and practice, and just practice and reading and all that stuff. And I'd been playing at that point already for like, 12 years or something. And he would just blow me off the map, But I was doing stuff like when we played, I'd play with my teeth, or I put my guitar behind my head and I play, and I don't have to be that good, but people in the audience don't know that. They listen with their eyes, And meanwhile, this guy's just sitting there, he's smoking me, on the guitar. But he never smiled. He just stood there. He didn't move around. One night we finished the show, and this guy comes up and he shakes my hand. He goes, "You're one of the best guitar players I've ever heard." And I go, "Man, that's embarrassing." He goes, "Why?" I go, "Because this is one of the best guitar players I've ever heard." He goes, "Well, yeah, he's good too." But he goes, "You play with your teeth and behind your head." And all of a sudden I looked at this guy, I go, "Do you see the little light bulb going off right here? Do you get it now?" And he ended up working at Disneyland after he left me and stuff. So he definitely got it, and he made a great career out of it and stuff, just by personality and stuff, especially if you're going to just try and be in popular music and stuff, Now, actually, the best jobs in the music business are going to be songwriters and music producers. Because you only work once, and then you just collect checks after that. You don't have to go out on the road and beat it up and everything, And my goal, I mean, I've had a lot of successes, but there's a lot more low points than those little peak moments and stuff, And I mean, all I wanted to do was get to the point where you got, maybe 2-3 albums out. You're riding from place to place on a bus. Everybody sets up all your shit, and all you have to do is go out there and somebody hands me a tuned guitar, and I go up and play for a couple hours, play my ass off, hand them back the guitar, and get back on the bus. Well, I came real close to that a couple times, and for just moments here and there, but it's it was fleeting, and of course that's the level everybody. I mean, I wasn't looking to be a superstar. I didn't want to be the Beatles or Aerosmith or whoever or anything. I mean, everybody would love to be, but I just wanted to achieve. There's different levels, of course, in that industry where you can, and I ended up doing a lot of just bar lounge kind of stuff, for the bulk of my living. And you get those shots at a big, gig once in a while and stuff, which is nice. I got to open for some big names and things.
Yeah. You've clearly collabed with a lot of people, but is there anyone like really specific that you'd love to collab with?
I don't know, because that was the thing about being in Vegas. You get to play such a wide market. I mean, I'm covering everybody from Sinatra to Green Day, for Christ's sake, and everything in between. I mean, country and blues and pop. I mean, whatever, classic rock. I mean, because I'm doing all these gigs, and that's what people want to hear, and that's what they're asking for. So, but that was also the problem when I did. If you go the album, I just said 95 that I self-produced with 8 songs. They're all over the map musically. A couple of them are country. There's a few like straight ahead rock and roll things. There's 1 or 2 alternative kind of sounding things. And I'd send these to labels, and they go, Dino, the songs are nice, but we don't even know how to promote you. You're all over the map musically. What do you want to even? I don't even know what to call it or call you or whatever. I can't pigeonhole you into a style. And I said, well, good. Just get somebody else to record them, then, and I'll collect the checks. That is a songwriter, you get somebody like Kenny Rogers back in the day. If he recorded, he ships platinum, for God's sake. That's good for $60,000-$80,000 even back then. Just if you're the guy that wrote the song for him,
Yeah.
But it's not like that now, and that's now. I consider myself more semi-retired. I play for fun. I mean, I'm still writing songs. I would like to get something out there, and everybody just wants to click or get that moment of recognition or something. I guess one hit wonder. I've always aspired to be a one hit wonder.
Obviously, we know that, like as you were saying, there is still money in music, but like you said, back in the 90s, you could have sold CDs and records, which obviously did bring a big income in, and that's not something as big anymore. So people do now do streaming instead. Do you think that's a big impact on the income within music industry?
Absolutely, it's huge. I mean, people are getting more exposure. Artists are getting more exposure, but a lot less money for it. I've been putting up stuff on YouTube for 10 or 12 years, for example. In fact, I use it a lot as a digital copyright. If I write a new song, I'll just record a little demo and I'll throw it up on YouTube because it's going to have a timestamp on it of when I put it up. And I go, written by, Dino Perelli on this date and blah, blah, blah. But you have to have, before you can make any money off that from those views, like, how can I say I love you when you're sitting on my face, has had like almost 20,000 views, but I don't get a dime because I don't have at least 1,000 subscribers to my channel. I've got like 100, maybe even less than 100 or something. So that's the trick, and they just catch you at all these. And even when you do start getting paid, it's I've had stuff on Spotify for years and iTunes and stuff that, before they even went with the $1,000 or 1,000 person subscribers, I was getting some checks from YouTube once in a while, but they would be like maybe $200 a year. You certainly aren't going to live on that. And that was just, I thought I was getting a lot of plays. I was hitting thousands of plays and stuff, but that's nothing, obviously, as unless you just go viral. And I'm trying to, everybody's trying to figure out what it takes to do that. You got to do something crazy. So now I didn't tell you about my writer side. Are you?
Yeah.
Because that's actually, I call him Dean Pearl because it sounds a lot less ethnic than Dino Perelli. It was like Dean Martin. His real name was Dino Martino.
Yeah.
So Dean Martin and stuff. Well, I thought, I'm going to use the same thing as I start to write these books. So I've actually written 2 novels, fiction novels, and I've got a satirical autobiography, which is basically... in the early 90s, I used to write for a magazine called Maximum Rock. They gave me a column every month, and it was called The Adventures of Dino Danger. And I would just, go on about a little road story or, something that happened with our band on the road, that kind of thing. And I had a year and a half of them, the magazine went out of business or whatever. They stopped publishing. So I had these for a while, and then I found out about self-publishing, and I go, well, I'll just put these out and throw them up on Amazon, and put them into a book. So it's out there, and it's probably sold better than the other two fiction novels overall, you know. But it's not exactly burning up the charts or anything. You know, it's another one of those things. It's like you just keep throwing hooks in the water and hoping something's going to bite at some time. You know, that kind of
The
thing.
good
But
thing about stuff like that though is there, so you don't have to do anything extra with it. It's just there and it's ready for people to come along and go like get it when they want. So you're not constantly needing
yeah,
to.
it's called print on demand.
Yeah, so it's a lot better than
So,
like, printing 100 books and then just having them sitting there. So yeah,
well, and I would order, you know, like 20 or 30 of them myself and try and sell them off stage and
yeah,
stuff, you know, souvenirs or merchandise or whatever. But yeah, I at the time, and this was, I guess the first book came out just a little after 2000, maybe 2005 or something. I did it, and I found these print on the that was called Create Space, you know. So I didn't have to put up any money or anything. I mean, I had to get it all formatted right for them, but and then of course once they sell the book, you set your price, they get a percentage, you get a percentage. So it doesn't cost you anything, and they, you know, whether it's if they order one or 100, you know, and of course I get a discount if I order them myself. So I would order some and sell them off the stage. Of course, I end up giving them away more than I'm selling them, you know, because you just do that, you know. It's like, oh, it's your birthday, here's a book.
it's a bit
Happy
more.
birthday, you know.
So
Although there's a funny story, the place I used to play in Vegas, I was at the same casino for 12 years. I had a house gig just doing a single act and stuff. And it was through the 90s. So in 95, when I did my solo album, you know, by myself, you know, I had all these CDs shrink wrapped in the whole bit, you know, and I had boxes of them, and I was trying to sell them off the stage, you know, for $10 each. But again, I was, you know, I would do trivia and stuff. I go, oh, you're right. Here's a CD. I'm just
yeah,
giving them away. I probably gave away 100 or more of them, you know, kind of thing. Well, you know, this is a small locals casino in Vegas, and it was filled with what they call fleas, which are the people who don't gamble much and stuff. They're always looking for freebies and
yeah,
stuff. Half of them walk around looking for coins in the machine and stuff, you know, that kind of thing. So one day there's a pawn shop about a couple blocks from the place I'm playing. And I go down there and I'm looking through the CDs and I see this whole row of CDs. They all look the same. And I pull one out. It's mine. It's still shrink wrap. There was about 15 of them in there. These fleas are like taking the CDs that I'm giving to them and walking next door to the pawn shop and like pawning them for a quarter or 50 cents or whatever just to get some gambling money or cigarette money or something. I go, oh my God, you know.
that's
So that's why Vegas was such a. I don't advise any musicians to move to Vegas until after you're famous.
yeah.
Let's put it that way. Don't move there before you're famous, because I was always making trips to LA because it was like, oh, well, I got to be in LA, you know, trying to make it out there because that's where it's all going on for the original stuff. And yeah, well, that didn't work either.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons of being attached to a label or being independent?
Well, you know, back in the old day, again, I don't know what it's like today, because I mean, it seems like I don't know that many stations, and I probably wouldn't listen to them anyway, that are playing the real current stuff. I mean, it's just not my cup of tea to listen to and stuff. In fact, I listen to talk radio more than I listen to music in the car and that kind of thing. But yeah, at one time it was all about getting the album deal, getting the major label deal, you know. But I've had friends who signed major label deals, and one or two albums later they break up. Because what happened back then was, you know, you got Sony Records, okay, and they say, well, look, we're gonna sign 12 new acts this year, but they're actually only putting money into 3 or 4 of them, and then the others, they're going to sign them and they're going to give them some support, but they're not really investing in them. They let them float for an album or two. They want to see how they do. Well, that gets very frustrating, because you think, you know, oh, man, we got this deal and all the money's going to come flowing in and stuff, and it doesn't happen that way. And if you make a bad deal, you could end up owing them money even after selling a bunch of albums and stuff. So, I mean, it's changed now. Everything is, I don't think there's a lot of, until you start hitting, you know, million views and stuff like that, I don't know if agents and management are even getting involved with anybody. Unless they're just enthralled with them or amazed by them and say, okay, we can promote. Or if you're in LA or New York or one of those music markets, you know, Nashville, Austin, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you can break through, you know, if you become strong enough regionally. That's always the big thing. I mean, first of all, you got to become the thing in your town. You know what I mean? Be the biggest band in your town, and then be the biggest band in your area. Then be the biggest band in the tri-state area. I mean, this was like when I was growing up, like Styx. You remember Styx? did all the songs back in the 70s and stuff, major super band. Well, they grew up in my neighborhood, and that is actually how they grew. They started out just being the big band in town. Then, of course, they're playing, like before long, they're playing 3 and 4 state area, and then they get signed by A&M, and boom, they go national and stuff. So, I mean, you can't go wrong that way. And it's all about the audience. It really doesn't seem to be as much about the music anymore as how the audience will relate to you. I mean, if they're gonna have to relate to the music if they're not watching you, but if you're on stage, you've got to, that's why it's gotten so gimmicky, and it's all about production and lights and throwing, a dozen dancers out there to make it. Whatever happened to the days where the guys just sat down on stage and just played their ass off, and it sounded beautiful, and you just appreciated it for that. You didn't have to have all these flashing lights and explosions or anything. So, but I blame that on just the fact that it's gotten too easy to be a musician these days. It doesn't take 10 or 15 or 20 years of practice to achieve a virtuosity, that kind of thing. I mean, you can learn to be a DJ in 2 weeks, or learn how to, whatever, just make your own beats or whatever, that kind of thing. I mean, that's not a talent that you have to, I guess there has to be some talent there. And don't get me wrong, but it's not the kind of thing you cultivated, like learning to play the drums or a piano or a guitar or a saxophone or whatever. I mean, that took years and years in practice and dedication and stuff, and that's gone away. And that's why the music has become so plastic and electronic and everything, I think, because nobody wants to apply the time. They all want to be stars overnight. Well, so did we when we were growing up, but we knew that you had to get there. It wasn't just going to fall in your lap. It's like going fishing and expecting the fish to just jump in the boat.
Yeah, I do think that that's kind of like the situation things are in at the moment. Like a lot of people think, oh, I'll put a song on YouTube and then I'll be rich the next day, and obviously it's not like that at all. But we noticed how like there can be really, really good artists on YouTube who maybe aren't getting the millions and millions of views, but they're producing really good stuff. And that's why we came up with the idea of Fizzle, because on there, so I don't know how much you know about Fizzle, but on there, when you do get like 1 subscriber, you paid straight away. So it's like you only need 1 to be making anything, and then we pay out 85% of whatever you earn, which is obviously a lot higher than like YouTube, Spotify. I think streaming's like 0.003p or something like that, something crazy. Yeah. So we knew that there was like a market for where we thought we could help musicians who maybe don't have as many followers, but they're making good stuff, and then you're creating your money to then get into making better stuff to then promote yourself more and stuff like that. So,
well, and sure, unless you're Elon Musk and have billions of dollars to pump into something, and it's going to take time. You got to build up that base, and you're just like a new band and stuff. I mean, you're starting out. You got to build your base up, and you get dedication and followers, and people go, "Hey, this is great. This works." I saw your setup, and I thought, yeah, this would be nice. I'd like to, I'll send them a cover letter. And of course, I had to kind of mix it up a little because I had to get your attention. If I had just said, hey, man, I'm this guy sitting in Central Florida somewhere, and I'm just, beating out a couple songs. You want to interview me? Well, what have you done? That kind of thing. So, at least, and that's the thing. I mean, I don't.
Anyway, I can say that. Definitely been interesting.
Well, you don't want to be the kind of guy who just sits there going, well, I've done this, I've done that, and I've done this, and I've done, unless it's relevant to something you're talking about. But I mean, self-promotion is a lot of it too. I mean, I learned how to be a videographer and all kinds of a recording engineer and all that stuff just by happenstance, by being a musician and having to do it for myself, learn it and stuff. Photoshop. I mean, and now I'm pretty good at it. I'm actually doing it for other people, at this point. But I wish you guys like a ton of success and everything with it. I hope it goes well for you. And I'm just glad you're involved in the business, and just trying to promote it and being fair to the artists and stuff is important,
we definitely want to build it the best way we can for musicians. We definitely think it's a market that can massively be helped with Fizzle.
Absolutely.
So yeah, well, I just want to say thank you for coming on and chatting with us and stuff, because I found it really, really interesting speaking to you. I love how the music's been like all your life and stuff like that, the different journeys you've been on. But just before we finish, do you want to tell me, tell us maybe something that you do that isn't involved in music, like a side hobby, if you have anything like that, or is it just music completely?
It's pretty much music. I mean, like I say, in the writings, I mean, the books and stuff. I had another character tried to emerge about a year or two ago that I was calling him Zero.
Okay.
And he was like, I was doing like some art pieces and stuff, some sculptures and dioramas and that kind of thing, and putting them on Etsy and stuff. But Zero's problem was he was the one that was like completely sober. He just drank water and wanted to eat right and stuff, and the other two kicked him out. So
Oh, maybe
he wasn't making any money anyway, and the other two said no, he's got to go because this ain't working for us. So and I joke about it, but I'm there's a little, there's always a little truth in the humor there somewhere. So my last psychologist called it a mild multiple personality disorder.
It's always more fun that way, though, isn't it? So
Sure. Hey, I want to come over and visit England sometime,
I
so
definitely need to.
I guess I better hurry because I ain't getting
You
any.
can come over there as well.
Yeah, great. If you get to Central Florida, look me up.
Definitely. So yeah, thank you anyway for taking the time to speak to us today. It's been dead interesting. If you send us all your links, we'll put them in the comments below for anybody to go on, your YouTube link, your Amazon link, your Facebook link, just whatever. We'll let everyone know where to find you. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Excellent.
Yeah, well,
Thank you very much.